Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Most are afraid of unknown depths, skirting shores thinking world flat, and with the island girls in celebration of new religion. Nobody led me or said this way. I sailed alone on makeshift raft with wind as companion. Fate for deliverance, confidence enough to assess new disposition. Seekers of lost paradise may seem fools to those who never sought the other worlds. Welcome to Momentary Zen with Zen Garcia. Visit www.fallenangels.tv. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
And he made a plan with his powers. He sent his angels to the daughters of men that they might take some of them for themselves and raise offspring for their enjoyment. And at first they did not succeed. When they had no success, they gathered together again and they made a different plan together. They created a counterfeit spirit who resembles the spirit who had descended, so as to pollute the souls through it. And the angels changed themselves in their likeness into the likeness of their mates, the daughters of men, filling them with the spirit of darkness which they had mixed for them, and with evil. They brought gold and silver and a gift and copper and iron and metal and all kinds of things. And they steered the people who had followed them into great troubles by leading them astray with many deceptions. They, the people, became old without having enjoyment. They died not having found truth and without knowing the God of truth. And thus the whole creation became enslaved forever from the foundation of the world until now. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen here on Revolution Radio. I thank you for taking the time to join us this evening. I have as co-host Kathy Dunson. Kathy, are you there, sister?
Yes, I am. Good evening, everybody.
Always a pleasure to fellowship with you, sister. And as special guests this evening, we have both Tim Clark and Kris Deleon from End Times Matrix News. Kris, are you there, sister?
Yes, I'm here. Hello.
Hello, and I'm glad that you were able to make it and join us this evening. Tim, are you there, brother?
Yes, I'm here, and I brought Kris with me this week.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to the round table, and it's just going to be an informal setting, and we'll just go into all things esoteric. And so, but let me give you, Tim, chance to give out your website, contact information, and everything connected to End Times Matrix News, and then we'll go to Kris.
Okay, End Times Matrix News on YouTube. That's where we put all our videos. We also have the two Facebook pages, Kris ETMN, and also End Times Matrix News. And you can catch what we're following there, from breaking stories to our own posts, some little podcasts we put up, different things.
Excellent. Kris, do you want to share your contact information or Facebook or anything of that nature?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook as Kris ETMN, and we have a website, endtimesmatrixnews.com, which we're actually in the process of updating into a new website.
Okay, excellent. When is that supposed to be online, or when's that happening?
Well, we are under
Hope
construction right now.
Okay, so no timetable for that.
Right. We're trying to proceed quickly on that. We're also working on the book project that Kris and I are working on to bring that to fruition also.
Excellent. Well, just yesterday, November 1st, we got our business license for Sacred Word Publishing, and so we are all legit, and just a matter of now getting the website up and connecting it with the nonprofit, which I did a show on all that. So people can go check out the Endeavor Freedom and Sacred Word Publishing show to find out more about all that. And you, of course, you can let us know if we can be of any service to you guys in what you are doing. We'll most certainly be glad to help out in any way. But let me give you, each of you, is there any news story that you find of interest? And I'm sure Kathy has several, but anything that you want to mention here before we go into discussion? Kathy, do you have anything?
Well, I mean, there's so much coming out right at the moment on Hillary Clinton. There was something, well, there's supposedly a counter coup going on. Steve Pajinik, who is from intelligence, past administrations, has uploaded a video talking about, what several intelligence people have come out in their very strong in this trying to expose Hillary and what's going on and get her to step down from running for president. So, I mean, there's just things breaking every 5 minutes right now.
Right, right. And I'll share a comment. Just the past couple of days, I've been doing several interviews with Stan Johnson over there at Prophecy Club News, and he shared with me an interesting story about that same thing that you were talking about and the rediscovery of many emails that they had scrubbed and which they had disappeared successfully, and that with the seizure of Anthony Weiner's cell phone and his laptop, that they gained access to a lot of that material that was successfully disappeared. And so this is why, it's come to light again. And from what I understand, they most certainly have enough information to bring down the Clintons, and not just the Clintons, but so much of the establishment there in Washington, D.C., and also the Clinton Foundation
That was
accepting
what, yeah.
bribes. Yes, did you get a chance to read that article that I had sent you?
Yes, yeah, and from other things that I've heard about that, I think that's the most interesting aspect. And what that article, well, actually, it was like a letter. I don't know where it originated, but all of it rang completely true to
Hmm.
me. It said it was from an FBI insider. Said
Right,
not to be so fixed on the emails because it's the Clinton Foundation
right.
that is the big kahuna here, and from everything else that I've heard and seen, it's the foreign government involvement. It's the tentacles all throughout the government. We have a corrupt government, and this is
Totally,
what
yes.
is ready to be blown sky high. And
Right.
it's that's where the House of Cards. I mean, I told my mother, if anyone has seen House of Cards on Netflix, that's tame compared to what's really going on in our government, sadly.
Yeah, I haven't seen that, but also I've been told that well, in that email that I sent you, it also speaks about how she had um, sold these secretive programs that she wasn't even supposed to have access to, that one of her donors had given to her, and that she traded these secrets off for high level donations through the Clinton Foundation, and that and this wasn't in the email, but that there are high level FBI agents that are resigning and retiring in order to protest they're not indicting her and bringing charges. And so there's like um, a lot going on in Washington because everybody knows how criminal and corrupt she is, and they're trying to force the hand of Comey to actually do something about it. And the fact that he actually made a statement and brought this to the attention of the media before that of the election, because, of course, the Clintons and others have been trying to pressure him to withhold it and to not allow it to affect the, well, I say election selection, but
Right.
you're right. And so um, and they're trying to install her most certainly, and so we'll see what happens. But there's a
Well,
lot
one
there.
other thing I'd point out, because the black box voting with Bev Harris, she's come out, and I haven't heard this in the major media. Of course, I'm not really surprised, but about the fraction magic is what her video is called. And anyone who hasn't seen that, be sure and search on YouTube for fraction magic, and all of that is going on. And it's just amazing that it's gone this far at this time, and so many things around the edges are just coming together at this particular time. I personally don't see how they would give up power. I mean, not to go
Hmm.
completely, I don't believe they would give up power. And so I look for, what other things can happen. We've got Russia, and we've got, the US is so involved in the Middle East and in Syria. And that's a powder keg. Anything could happen at any moment. I don't see them wanting, I mean, we're going to see a peaceful transition of power. So, we've got the voter fraud, and then everything that's coming out showing what a treasonous government. So there's so many things that could happen in such a short period of time. Everybody needs to be paying attention.
And praying.
And
Uh, and final comment on this, and then we'll go to Chris and Tim. But the whole thing, WikiLeaks has information, and there's other stuff that is being released, and so we know that the Clintons have whacked people, that people have all of a sudden ended up dying in accidents or being shot in the streets. I mean, the people that some of those that have gone up and that were going to testify against them have ended up dead. And so there's the knowledge of that kind of thing happening too, as far as with the FBI. And so, there are some who are wanting to come forward know they have to be very careful, because the high level assassinations have taken place, and that is definitely a possibility for those that might want to leak or bring forth any information. But anyways, let me go to Chris or Tim. Do you have any comment on this, or if you anything that you wanted to share with the listening audience, anything of interest?
Chris, you want to go ahead?
No, you can go ahead, Tim. I know you've been
Okay.
following the news.
Well, just on this story, I mean, there's a couple ways of looking at it. I actually feel spiritually that there's a lot of breakthrough as far as the potential for the corruption to be dealt with, to some degree. I do believe that the voting machines are compromised,
Hmm.
and that even if we do see, we've seen the Hegelian dialectic play out between the patriots and the globalists. That dynamic being set up here between the globalist, communist takeover of the globe versus the Christian national, independent, freedom loving folks. So we got that dynamic. But I actually feel that, prophetically, I am agreeing with some people that see this as that the spirit of Haman is possibly hanging himself in this scenario that we might have, with the prayer and fasting of the Christians going on out there, that we might see a Esther like event here where they designed to have the Christians in the FEMA camps and all that, and they might end up hanging themselves in the situation. So those are my comments on that topic.
I'll say one final thing before we leave, and everybody knows my stance on the election. I just posted recently on my Facebook page a very lengthy quote from the occult technology of power, which talks about the controlled opposition and the false left right paradigm. But in talking with Stan today and other people, a lot of people seem to think that Trump is legit, and that this could be like a Josiah kind of thing for America. I don't see it as that, because I know that they always give us the false illusion of choice. But I'm open, and we'll see. And I pray for the betterment of America and the world. But again, as far as candidates, In my opinion, they are always chosen, selected by the elitists in order to own both sides of the whole, dog and pony show. And I know a lot of people don't like um, my stance on that, but that's just what I've seen and have learned over the years. And with these kissing cousins, which that was the name of an article that I wrote about the George Bush elections with his cousin Al Gore, and then his cousin John Kerry, and then we had Obama and John McCain, and Obama is also blood related to Dick Cheney and some of those, and so we'll see how it all turns out. But I pray for the best. But anyways, Chris? Is there any topic that you would like to open with, talk about, or just a commentary? Anything you want to share as far as projects that you're working on, new knowledge, insight, wisdom that you've come across, anything of that nature?
Yeah, I wanted to agree with Kathy that they're not going to go peacefully. I think that they have their own little entourage of their own. But I do agree with you too, Zen, that they play both sides. George Soros and Kissinger, whom all of these people have worked for, even the man, I forgot how you say his name, but he's talked about the coup, the military coup. He worked for Kissinger. And I think that he might be on his own now, as a lot of people are starting to resign and want to fight for the Constitution. I think that a lot of chaos is going to happen. I don't think that Soros or Kissinger really care who's going to win the election, because I think they have other plans in store for the New World Order.
Hmm.
And I think that the Rothschilds are in control of everything, and that they are setting up the market to crash,
Yes.
and they have plans of their own. And I do believe that they are at war with the Rockefellers in some sort of way also. So I think that something definitely probably will happen, and a lot of chaos is going to happen. But like Kathy said, they're not going to go peacefully. They want to run that White House.
Right. And I do agree that there is infighting going on as far as the power elite. But no matter which hand, it's like the different fingers on the one hand. They're all serving Satan and giving allegiance to them. And as I show in my work, they're blood related and connected to the powers, the principalities, the rulers of darkness. So essentially, it is a spiritual war, and they are bowing down in order to these spiritual powers, the rebel angels, which have been here, exiled here for a very long time, and that have been given temporary reign over this fallen world. Tim?
No, I completely agree with the assessments that people are making right now. I'm just hopeful that we uh, get one, that the Lord intervenes, basically, is what I'm saying, and that the least amount of damage is done to the least number of people, and that those who are corrupt completely, get dealt with in the um, what do you want to say, the civilized manner that this society was set up under, of law and order rather than armed conflict.
Yeah, and I do know also that in the scriptures it said that in the last days that the evil would be exposed for what it is. And as far as how this is playing out, I hope it takes down as much of the evil structure that is set in place and that has corrupted, like leaven, um, what should be a representative form of government, even though I don't believe we've had that for a very long time. Even the fact that the Federal Reserve was instituted way back in 1913, and they have taken over, being able to regulate commerce and print the money and um, to manage all of that when Congress should be determining that and as far as weights and measures. And but I mean, they have owned control and printing the money. They've been able to fund these three global wars. Albert Pike, in his vision, spoke about the need to manifest these conflicts in order to bring forth their whole vision and the agenda of a one world order, and manifesting this world government so that they can then offer it over essentially to the Antichrist. And it's my opinion that's where everything is really going, and that it's not just about world government, but that it is essentially about bringing forth this alien God and handing over that world government and that global matrix to this particular, ancient alien who will be uh, hailed as the savior of humanity, rather than Christ, because that whole thing is being counterfeited as far as they know and the Christians know, and Scripture says that Christ in second coming will separate the harvest, that the wheat and the tares will be separated, the tares gathered for burning and the wheat for preservation. And so, um, definitely Lucifer and the Antichrist, Apollyon, Abaddon, that he is going to counterfeit that whole scenario and bring forth in his own substitute way that exact thing in order to trick as many people as he can. Let's go to Kathy for comment, and then we'll roundtable back to you two.
Well, I just think it's fascinating, if you understand, what is going on in the world right now, geopolitically, all the players involved, and you understand what has been laid out, like Pike, the Illuminati, other secret societies. There is something, I don't remember exactly the text that it came from now, but years ago, Serge Monast had written about this, that part of the plan was to flood the nations with immigrants. And you can see that going on. And that was to break down the barriers, break down the national sense of countries. And I mean, you can see that going on in spades. And that has come about primarily from the wars, the incessant wars that we are bringing about. But then everything is coinciding, coming together prophetically. You look at
Yes.
Isaiah 17:1 with Damascus being a ruinous heap. I mean, it's there. I'm sure it's going to get worse. Um, Gog and Magog that you all had talked about. I mean, most Christians look at that differently. Uh, so many are just blind and asleep to all that's going on, but everything is just coming to a crescendo and it's happening so quickly. It's absolutely fascinating to me. I'm really excited. I mean, also understanding that, I mean, Jonathan Clegg put out a video tonight with this coup that's going on, Steve's video, and this is it. This is it. He was so excited. It reminded me of the Charlie Frost character in the movie 2012. It was a great thing. So, I mean, on one hand, we're real excited. On the other, it's, there's a lot of death and destruction that can come. And that's been their plan all along.
Right. Order out of chaos.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Link in the chat room says the Jesuits most certainly. With
The
Hillary's
Jesuits.
the vice president being Keen or Kane or whatever his name is, that he's certainly part connected with the Jesuits, Pope Francis, and I think that these different individuals are being put into place in order for them to be able to accelerate the agenda even faster than what it is right now. Tim?
Oh, I completely agree. The I saw the what was it? The new Jesuit general was from Venezuela. That just came in. The Black Pope, the new Black Pope.
Oh, I didn't even see that.
Oh
Who?
yeah, yeah. Just this past week they put
Really?
it, and I said, "Oh,
Wow.
Venezuela of all places, huh?
Right?
Right where we got the major communist takeover and a collapse of society, that we're choosing a black pope from Venezuela." And
Right.
I
Where
went,
they already have done it
"Yep,
successfully.
exactly." I'm saying of all the places to choose somebody to head up your order, right where they've done it successfully.
Right.
So
So
that
they can
was,
repeat it here.
I didn't see anybody pick up on that. I remember Chris, I went and posted it, and not a whole lot of people paid attention to it, but it just kind of went under the radar for a lot of people. But yeah, this definitely, yeah, Cain of all people. Jeez,
Right.
where'd that guy come from?
Yeah,
Is it?
exactly.
Hey,
And
Mr.
I was
Go.
just gonna say I don't usually follow much, but I've heard him speak a couple times, and oh my God, he is so annoying and so arrogant. But back to you two.
No, I believe, I believe like a lot of people are, we're watching the Jesuits trying to move things, which made me, it was just interesting how hard the Pope came out against our election. And so it is interesting what's going on. And I'm with Kathy. I'm very excited because we know Jesus is coming back. I'm praying for an end time revival here, and that people wake up, and a lot of people are waking up, and it's actually very exciting to see.
Yes. Chris?
Yeah, I was just going to say earlier you were saying that they are waiting, the elite are, they worship Satan and they are waiting for his return. And you asked about what I'm working on and my recent studies. I've been working and collaborating with Anthony Patch. Me and Tim both have, and we have actually we work on decoding things. We have decoded the quantum computers and the numbers with octaves, and we have decoded them with the planets. And we have come a long way in our research together from a few years ago. And Satan in Revelation 12:13, it talks about where Satan's seat is, that it's in Pergamum,
Right.
and we know that that seat belongs to Zeus, which is Jupiter. That is Zeus's throne, and Obama preached off that throne, and so did Hitler. Now that just proves another fact that they are putting arches of Bale all over the world. The United Nations,
Hold on,
not
Chris.
only
Hold on. We'll pick it up right after this break. We'll be right back, everyone. All right, welcome back, everybody. I'm gonna just go ahead and turn it back over to Chris. Give you a chance to finish up your thought there, sister.
okay. I was saying that the United Nations is building the arches of Bel all over the world. Now, this is the same thing as the replica of the Arch of Triumph that Titus took to Rome when he conquered the Jews and stole all of their things. And so this is the same thing as that arch, saying that, they're defeating pretty much the Christians. So they're putting these arches all over the world, and they're arches of Bel. Well, Bel is also Jupiter. And Jupiter, the Pope called the Jubilees, the Bennu bird is the Lord of Jubilees in Egypt. And that's a long story. I don't want to get into that. But the Pope called the Jubilees. The end of the Jubilees is November the 20th, and that's when Jupiter goes into the womb of Virgo. We know that Jupiter is the son of Saturn in mythology, which Saturn is Samael, the lion, eagle, ox, and man, and he became a split deity. This is going to be in our books, or Nunos's box, with all of our research and the names of the fallen angels and their translations into different cultures.
Cool.
Now, yeah, so Jupiter is going to be birthed September 23rd of 2017, and we're not date setters. We're not saying anything is going to happen, but it makes a lot of sense. If Obama said, this is the year of our Lord, 2016, you can see it on the ready.gov page. Well, his Lord is Jupiter. He believes he's a son of Jupiter, just like all the other presidents, because they are in relationship to the Queen. All presidents are related to the Queen. The Rothschilds rule the royal family. And so I think that this is what they're preparing for with putting those arches up, actually pretty much giving the Arabs access to the Temple on the Mount, trying to shut the Jews out of the Temple on the Mount. The United Nations is doing that. The United Nations is building the Bale arches all over the world, and they actually named Saudi Arabia a head seat at the United Nations, which is pretty crazy. And also the Arabs, their laws, what they believe in, that women have no rights,
Sharia.
as well as a lot. Yeah, as well. They gave Hillary Clinton a lot of money for her campaign, and so they're actually a big part of the New World Order and the end times as well.
Oh yeah, they're one of the main branches that, in Albert Pike's vision, he speaks about how the Zionists, along with the Christians, with the support of the Christians, that they would be pinned up against the radical Muslim fanaticists, and that they would wear each other out in battle. And that when the power vacuum occurs, that then the atheists, the nihilists, the communists would step in to assume that power. And we can see how they've already been, with the manufacturing base being moved out of America, being established in these communist countries, specifically in China, and then all of these cheap, poisonous, toxic goods being imported and sold, through Walmart and things of that nature, the dollar stores and all of that. That America is being set up for ruin, and they're doing this on purpose, um, allowing us to borrow just incredible amounts of money from China, and then spending money just like there's no tomorrow, and like we never have to pay it back. The amount of debt that we're in now, and having to pay down all this interest with all this taxpayers' money, it's just ridiculous that we ever allowed. And that the Federal Reserve, it being a privately owned bank, um, all of it is just a huge um, Ponzi scheme, and it's the American people which are being forced to suffer and pay for it, because it's, as it says on the Satanist dollar bills, that it's all backed, legal tender backed by the goodwill and faith of the American people. I say that. If the Federal Reserve created the debt, the government created the debt, they should own it, not the people. Tim?
Oh, I've been saying that for a long time. I said, hey, it's a private bank, isn't it? So it's their debt.
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
their debt, and they should get RICO acted and have everything confiscated for them for defaulting, and leave us out of this.
I agree.
But the main thing I'm looking at, as far as what I want people to grasp, is that like in pop culture, the movies such as V for Vendetta, trauma based mind control, we're going through a global version. What's going on now? This is a global version of trauma based mind control. So rather than focusing on the one person being tortured and then bonding with their torturer, which is the Luciferian doctrine after they torture the globe by crashing the Christians into the Muslims and the Jews and all this kind of stuff, that the people be so exhausted that they want to latch on to the knight in shining armor, which will be this Luciferian character, whether it's alien deception or whatever. But the point is, it's a global based, trauma based mind control that we're under right now. And if people can understand, they're just doing the same game, just on a corporate global level.
Yes, absolutely. And that's what we see playing out. And I'm going to actually pull up the quote that we are bringing forth and referring to, so that the listeners can get a better idea, a better sense of what it is that we are absolutely referencing. But before I do, I want to give both Kathy and Kris a chance to comment on this, and then we're going to answer a question that was posed in the chat room. And so, Kris, let's go to you first, and then we'll go to Kathy.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to say too that through the research that I decode numbers and words. And Anthony Patch has given me a few numbers to decode with the quantum computers. And one of them is 65,536, which is how many neurons we have in our brain. So Tim is talking about mind control, and we're talking about a quantum computer that is pretty much a new age Faraday cage. It's a channeling machine to the other side. And that number, I translated it and I went on Richie from Boston show and I actually showed all of the words and all the translations that I went through, but it means the keys of Jupiter. And I found that very interesting because he is Bale and because of the cycles that is happening right now with him being birthed and everything. And from the worship of him through the sons of Jupiter, the sons of Jupiter are going to be in our book also when Jesus preached against the gates of hell at the Caesarea Philippi. So he is the sons of Jupiter will be in our book. Nero is an anagram for CERN. It means 666. His name also translates to that. And I decoded that number all through our book. Also, it's going to be called Cernunnos's box. Cernunnos is the shaman in the sky, which is Orion. His head alternates, which is the different planets. And they become suns like Jupiter, Mars, Saturn. And the birthing of the Antichrist, which is talked about in our show that is on End Times Matrix News YouTube, talks about how CERN is over Apollo's temple and how they want to birth the Antichrist and how the casket of Osiris, which is the boat of Ra, is in the center of CERN. And we talk about that in depth on our show, and we have another one coming out with Anthony, which is part 2 that we haven't finished releasing yet. But all of this is big information because it ties in with the end times. We're pretty much reverse engineering technology on our research to show exactly what they're doing. But as Tim said, it is all mind control because in the Bible there was 2 trees. One was life and one was consciousness. If we go with the tree of consciousness, then that is what Satan wants, is our mind. If we go with the tree of life with Jesus in our heart, that is life, and that is the way to the other side because he is the only gate. There is no other gate to heaven other than through Jesus Christ and his DNA, because DNA is what this is all about also, and that'll also be in our videos talking about the DNA connected to CERN.
Very cool. Kathy, and then I've got a couple quotes I'd like to share.
Good. I want to hear a lot more from Kris. And I wanted to ask her too about Cernunnos and relation to the Gothard tunnel opening, because that was really a freak show. The one thing I wanted to share, I had this quote that I shared with everyone. I send out an email newsletter. I'm doing it. I sent out 3 this afternoon. If anybody wants on that, I'm sending out breaking news. I'm pretty much trying to pay close attention, 24/7. Write me, Perelandra77@gmail.com. It's PERELANDRE. Wait. PERELANDRA77@gmail.com. Anyway, this quote from Abraham Lincoln: America will never be destroyed from the outside. If we falter and lose our freedoms, it will be because we destroyed ourselves. And that seems really to hit it right now.
Yes. The quote from Albert Pike about the Third World War. And also, for those that don't know about the vision of Pike and the agenda for these 3 world wars as means to perpetuate, propagate, and to bring forth a one world order, this vision was written down in letter to Giuseppe Mazzini, who was the head of the Eastern side and part of the head of the Italian mafia. That Pike was the controller, the sovereign grand master of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry here in America and in the West, but Giuseppe Mazzini was the controlling old world and European sovereign Grand Master of the Illuminati there. And so they worked together, and he wrote a letter in 1871, I believe it was in August sometime, and he described having this vision. And since that time, we see with the procuring of the Federal Reserve System that they then had the money and the power and the authority in being able to print the money and loan it to our government at interest. That it was then soon thereafter that we have these wars being manifest. World War One, the introduction then of the League of Nations, which failed, and then after the bloody and horrific mess of World War II, then all of the nations were willing and ready to give up sovereignty in order to merge in union through the United Nations to resolve their issues and the conflict amongst nations. And so that's when the United Nations has been granted respect and authority, even though they most certainly are not deserving as such. If you look at the history, they've done nothing to stop or stem wars, but have only encouraged and created and manipulated. But, anyways, so this vision is of the third world and a war. And if they have already successfully brought forth these two, well, what does that tell you about what they have planned as what I'm about to read? It says, the Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the agenture of the Illuminati between the political Zionists, which are those that have pushed for the recreation of the nation state of Israel, and the leaders of the Islamic world. The war must be conducted in such way that Islam and the Muslim Arabic world and political Zionism, the state of Israel, mutually destroy each other. Meanwhile, the other nations, once more divided on this issue, will be constrained to fight to the point of complete physical, moral, spiritual, and economical exhaustion. We shall unleash the nihilists and the atheists, and we shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm. Can you talk about the, destruction of the financial world order, social cataclysm, which in all its horror will show clearly to the nations the effect of absolute atheism, the origin of savagery, and of most bloody turmoil. Then, and here's the kicker, then everywhere the citizens obliged to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries will exterminate those destroyers of civilization, and the multitude disillusioned with Christianity, whose deistic spirits will form that moment be without compass or direction, anxious for an idea, but without knowing where to render its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out in the public view. The manifestation will result from the general reactionary movement, which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time. And so you can see that they want to bring forth Luciferianism, the introduction of the Antichrist. You can find all this in the protocols of the learned elders of Zion. They even talk about this social cataclysm, a great economic destruction, which we see all being played out and planned. And so the writing is on the wall. It's been there for a very long time, and they have been very successful in fomenting and bringing forth this particular vision by Albert Pike. Let's get comments. Kris, I'll go to you first, and then I'll read the question from the chat room.
Okay. Yeah, I do see all of that playing out very soon. I mean, it's interesting they haven't taken our guns away yet. And we know that that's going to come with the United Nations. But I've read Albert Pike and I've read about the wars and with the Zionists, the Muslims, And we have this decision that was on the Temple of the Mount. They can build it, very quickly if it is built and they have the calf ready, the red heifer, and everything is ready. We have the new world order into place where um, the Pope wants the one world religion. He's already met with all world leaders. He's already met with Google and many other with Apple, and the reason I think that he is because he understands what's going to happen with this technology when the portal opens, because CERN admits to themselves that they are going to open a portal. They've already been able to reach to the other side and take back 10% of energy that they put back in, that they put in. So they've already been able to communicate with the other side for many, many years. It's kind of like when channelers would channel, and then they had the remote viewers with the military, all the mind control things, the looking glass, and all of this mind control stuff is exactly the quantum computer, except it is very high technology from fallen angels. It's fallen angel technology, and that's who they're communicating with, is with the nine, the Ogdode, which becomes the Enid. That's who they communicate with.
And interesting, because Tim and I talked about this in grand detail in the last show that we did, and we spoke about how the Most High had been holding a restraining hand, and that he that's why he brought destruction upon Atlantis in the olden days, and also with the Tower of Babel and all that they were trying to do during that time, and with the flood in wiping out the presence of the giants, that the Most High has at every turn of the way judged the fallen angels and has rendered their attempts mute and nullified them. But that it's my opinion that this time he is going to allow them to succeed and to call forth and to remove his restraining hand in order to allow them to accomplish what they are hoping to. And I shared the a passage from the Emerald Tablets, which talked about them bringing forth these dark beings and calling up, with great magic from the dark and the deep below. And I think that with the release of the fallen ones and the locust army and the giants from the hollow earth, that all of that has a part to play in the judgment that is coming, and the wrath of God being poured out on the wicked and those not being that are not written into the books of life, that he's going to give them exactly what they want, and that they will then wonder at after the beast, and that they um, will be persecuted by those entities which they call forth. Tim?
Well, I'm just enjoying the conversation. I do believe that at some point we're going to see the removal of the America from the
Protection.
superpower role,
Oh yeah,
and
that too, yeah.
for the New World Order to have their day, so that you can have a fulfillment of the of that side getting to reap what they have sown, and the Lord will. I believe the bowl judgments will be that point where they're going to reap all that wrath, and it's just going to be a horrendous loss of life. So yeah, it's definitely devastating what we're talking about here. What we're on the edge of this, and I mean, I keep telling people it's time to get saved and come out of the delusion and the state that you're in, to recognize that there is a division going on here between good and evil, and that you have to choose at some point, or else it'll be chosen for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Can I
that
ask a
And I
question?
yes,
real
yes,
fast.
please go
Oh,
ahead. Uh, let Kathy, do you want to ask the question and then
Yeah, it's real quick.
Chris
I
can?
was wondering because we're looking at a destruction of America at some point.
Yes.
I wonder if a hint might be they had talked about constructing a collider in Texas. Do you guys know if that has gone forward? Is that because I would think that okay, so they have CERN still. Maybe they weren't really serious about the one in Texas.
That program was shut down. That was
Okay.
actually under George Bush, the senior, I believe, out there in Texas, and that was going to be a really big, much bigger. That one shut down, I believe. There's several synchrotrons around the globe. I believe when the internet goes down permanently, then you will have the new world order internet, which will be linked up with these synchrotrons.
All right, hold the thought. Chris will come to you when we return. Be right back, everyone. All right, welcome back, everybody, for second hour. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen. I have as co-host with me this evening Kathy Dunson and special guests both Chris and Tim from End Times Matrix News. Chris, I wanted to give you a chance to finish up with your comment, and then I'm going to pose the question from the chat room.
Okay. I just wanted to comment that when the Antichrist is here, he's released. He said that they're going to follow after the beast, and the world is going to follow after the beast. But I think that first, before the beast is released, there's a beast that's released from the sea, and there's a beast that's released from the earth. And the beast is translated to hunter, which represents Orion in the sky. Orion is Cernunnos is proto Shiva, and that was noted as the constellation Orion in ancient times, and that's why Shiva is standing outside of CERN. But I just wanted to say that God seals those that are His on their forehead before the Antichrist is released from the pit. And it also, the Bible says that those that wander after the beast are the ones that are not sealed by God. And the reason is, I believe, is we go back to what Tim was talking about with mind control and this quantum computer and the portal opening. I think it all has to do with protecting the mind, because if we belong to God, then He protects our mind, and we don't follow after the beast. We don't follow Lucifer. We're not going to pledge to Lucifer in the end times for the New World Order.
Yeah, I fully agree. And I would also say that it's my opinion, as Kathy had stated earlier, that America is Mystery Babylon, and that I know so many people do not see or believe that America is written into Scripture. I'm certainly not one of them, and I do believe that Jeremiah 50 and 51, and that Ezekiel 38 and 39, that they are related, and also Revelation 17 and 18 are related to the judgments that are coming against America in a single hour and a single day, and that we right now are the world power that the New World Order has to bring to our knees in order to bring forth the world government and to give the United Nations the authority, that there cannot be a just independent country that has the power and authority to just not fall in line with the United Nations, and that this is one of the reasons why we have the visions of individuals like Dimitri Duduman, A. Allen, David Wilkerson, so many that have had prophecies of America being attacked by the Russians, by nukes from Russian submarines, and also an invasion by Chinese troops, that all of these things are in play. Kathy, let's go to you, and then we'll go back to Tim, and then after you comment, I'm going to give everybody the question from the chat room.
Um, Well, I would just direct people to the Last Days Ministries prophecy website, where a lot of those are. We see prophecies, dreams, and visions that are confirming that on a daily basis. There are many channels that we follow on our Facebook page that we share, and I share in the newsletter as well. There was one this evening that came out, fire and destruction. So these things are all confirming, and I would just suggest that everyone needs to be prepared to meet their creator at any moment. I mean, we are never promised more than our, we are never promised another moment. We're just a vapor in time. So that's, I mean, that's all I've really got to say.
Yeah,
I want
absolutely.
to hear them. I want to hear Kris and Tim.
Yeah. I agree, and I would also invite people to check out a website called America's Last Days.
Right.
I, yeah, that's a really great website. It has all the visions, George Washington, all the different prophets, modern day prophets over the last decade, which have had these visions. And how it ties together with Mystery Babylon. But all right, so here's the question from the chat room: how can believers be in the world matrix but not of the world in the matrix? And I'll start off with the answer. It's my opinion that even though we all, have to make money, have to pay our bills, we have to play the game as we were born and indoctrinated into it. The idea is to not dedicate all of your time, your focus, and your energy to having to stay caught up in that world. That we are to keep a foot in both worlds, but that we most certainly must, as much as we can, give our focus to the kingdom and to seeking relationship with God, into understanding Yeshua as Savior Messiah. As Kris said earlier, that it is only through Christ that we will be saved and guaranteed an eternal inheritance with Him in paradise and a return to our first estate. And so, the whole, as much as you can, do what you can to feed your family, take care of yourself, to make money to pay your bills, to not get in any debt or overspend, because that keeps you in bondage. If you are spending more than you make, or trying to live an extravagant lifestyle, then that's going to force you to be a slave to the system and have to work harder and dedicate more of your time, your life, and your effort to making all that happen. And so that's what I would say. Focus on the kingdom as much as you can. Tim, let's go to you first.
Well, I think my simplest way of looking at it is Lucifer would be the king of the flesh,
Yes.
and this is a flesh kingdom. So the Matrix, I would say, is a flesh kingdom, and that they try to entice you through your flesh. So whatever material goods or senses, any of your senses that are overstimulated, he wants to hook you up and drain your life force through the Matrix. The difference with Christ, of course, is that the reconnection and spiritual life through Christ, he's the king of a spiritual kingdom. And so eternal life is through Christ, the Lord. And so when you are born again, you find yourself not being interested in the fleshly things as much as you are into the spiritual things.
Yes.
And so there's the big dichotomy, the differing. One interesting comment on Kris's comment about being sealed. I've often looked at the armor of God in Ephesians 6 and verse 17. If you want to look at it, it says, "Take the helmet of salvation." Well, that right there is talking about a piece of armor that goes over your head and it seals you. Your salvation is
Interesting.
seals you. This is actually, and I've begun looking at that as this is part of a hint to the sealing process. Why are Christians always attacked by the world? Well, because we're not of the world, we're not of the matrix. And the point is, we have authority over the spirits of this world, And when we operate under our authority, we mess up the devil's plans. So I would have people just think about this, the sealing process that Kris talked about, sealed in our foreheads. And this helmet and the foreheads, the covering of the head with salvation, I think they definitely go together.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I never, thought about it that way or looked at it that way, but that is very interesting parallel, and I fully see the connection. Kris?
Yeah, I was just going to say that you were talking earlier about, and Kathy was talking about Mystery Babylon, possibly being the United States, and I'm not sure if it is or not, but we did a show called Mystery Babylon, and we also did one called The Eye of Orlando. It's funny how Orlando is shaped like a gun, and it's the eye. That's where all the stars are born, and um, we uh, show how Orion's belt is over the United States, and the 88th degree is the Madrid fault line. Well, August the 17th of 2017, before Jupiter was born, there's an egg that goes across the United States, and the very center of the egg goes on the 88th degree, which is the Madrid fault line. California represents 1/8 as the male sun, and New York represents the female as the Silver Gate. That's why they did the Twin Towers and knock those down as showing the one world trade. Um, but we talk about all of that in our show, and then how the 88 is a code for HH or H8, which are the Birkeland currents, because Shiva translates to 88. It is the number 7, which Shiva means 7. Shiva also represents the 7 planets, but also the Birkeland currents, which is the DNA that is going to connect from CERN to Saturn. And we talk about a lot of that in our shows, and we talk about Shiva being a line that's past and future, and explain all of that, how Shiva is shown as formed into being. So that is interesting, I think, in the end times, where the 88th degree is on the Madrid fault line. I know in old Navy maps it shows that being split into 2, and California being in the ocean, and most of Florida being into the ocean. And I know they have a lot of um, hidden bombs or nukes. I don't know what they're called, Tim, but they're all around that line. They can just blow it whenever they want to.
Mm-hmm.
And then remember Jonathan Kleck did the $100 bill was
Right.
showing the nuke going in New York City, and even Obama said, "Well, I'm more concerned with a nuke hitting New York City." Well, if 9/11 happened and they encoded it on the bills, why wouldn't we believe that it would happen in New York? The same thing would happen.
Right.
And also the Murrah building, that was encoded
Right.
in the Pentagon.
Yes. Yeah, the Oklahoma City body. And let me clarify. As far as, because I oversimplified that with America as far as being the connection with Mystery Babylon. I actually believe that Mystery Babylon is the New World Order system, and that it includes the Vatican, the Jesuits, the woman riding the Scarlet Beast. That the New World Order system is that seven, the kings and the 7 horns. That is all, the same system, but that America is being established to fall, and that we are the Mystery Babylon that is destroyed in Revelation 18 and 19. So I kind of oversimplified that, but that really the Mystery Babylon is the entirety of the New World Order system, which unites in, the Illuminati connections, the Freemasonic connections of all the governments of the world, um, in their uh, putting forth the agenda for the destruction of America, and in bringing forth the Antichrist system. And so it's not as simple. But I do see that America, as far as the Revelation 18:19 judgment, Jeremiah 50:51, and Ezekiel, those judgments are against us. And that New York is also the seat of the UN and the seat of where all the kings of the world are, currently located, especially when they come together for these United Nations meetings and they're plotting against the world. And so um, let's go back to Tim, and then there's another question from the chat room.
Yeah, I agree with the Mystery Babylon being a system, and it just is the old Roman global empire type system that encompasses so much of the earth. I think the United States, of course, will be destroyed at some point. I think that's why there's some prophecy, I forget which one it is, if it's Hopi prophecy or something about the white men coming out of the mountains in, I believe it was Denver, Colorado, and I forget what that mountain was, but supposedly we have that's where the government of the United States would relocate to in the continuity of government contingency.
Interesting. Yeah, I haven't heard about that, but that is very interesting. Chris, did you want to comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the United Nations has a newer building in Denmark that is the eight pointed star. Apollo represents the wheel and the eight pointed star, and so does Inanna. Those are the 88s. That's how they sign their names in angelic writing, also, is eight.
Interesting.
You
Interesting.
mentioned about the New Madrid being 88th. Was it the 88th parallel? We had an earthquake. I'm in Tulsa, and we're not far from there. And we had an earthquake last night. It was 4.5 magnitude, which is quite significant. And I wonder if there's anything going on to create that. I know they've been claimed to be caused by fracking, but um, there could be more going on. Anyway, I thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah. I felt the last earthquake from Oklahoma. Actually, my whole building swayed, and I'm in Texas, so I felt it.
That was huge. I was typing an email right at the time to send, so it was really big.
Crazy. Also, for those that don't know, the Indonesian earthquake that there was a nuclear test on the fault line, on that ring of fire fault line. And so that was actually caused by what Chris had alluded to. They have the technology. They placed a nuke on the fault line, and that tsunami and the death of all those people was caused by that particular test. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can look it up, and there is information out there which confirms this. I'm going to answer this question really quick from the chat room. Rayo asked me specifically, how about the Sumerian text in relation to your Bible Genesis account? I cover this in great detail in my sixth book, Sons of God, Who We Are and Why We're Here. And that's not the focus of this particular show this evening, but I invite you to take a look at that information. And also, for the listening audience, uh, just know that I just did a 5-part series with Stan Johnson and the Prophecy Club on the Sons of God, that particular book, and its connection to these kind of things. So check out that series. It should be released within a few days. He is currently editing those shows for release, and we're doing 2 more shows on this topic tomorrow. So it'll be a 7-part series. Um, let's go back to Tim. I'm going to give you a chance, brother, to bring forth anything of interest. We're already down to what will be the final segments shortly. So I want to give you opportunity to bring forth anything of interest, anything that you feel, a pressing need to share about anything. So please.
Well, my main focus right now is just I'm doing a lot more podcasting on salvation things, and it's actually been kind of interesting. I just had put out recently the 7 Things That God Hates podcast, and paralleled it with our Obama and Hillary, and the verses of in that, and then all this stuff came out right after that podcast. So it was actually kind of it had that prophetic feel that it was meant for that release time. So I'm continuing, mainly trying to focus on scriptural mini podcasts to go along with our big research projects that Kris and I and Anthony are involved with the decoding. Um, Really looking forward to the Cernunos coming out because it's time for that book to be released. It's got so many interesting combinations of scripture and the sons of God, the sons of Jupiter in there. They look exactly like our leaders of today. If you can imagine Caligula and Nero, and then you're just looking at Bill Clinton and Hillary and Barack Obama, they're all the same Caligula and Nero type individuals, and so the parallels are unreal. So Kris is doing a great job with coming out with the decoding that she's doing, and I think our next project should be coming out pretty soon on part 2 of our. These are big projects, so sometimes they take some time to come out. But yeah, mainly scriptural, getting through this time of the elections, supporting the Christians out there, and preaching the gospel is where I am right now.
Absolutely. Kris, I wanted to ask you about the book and about about how many pages it is. And if you would mention some of the chapters, talk about it a little bit, share some more revelation on it. And then do you have any other projects, book projects that you'll be working on? Or are you working on multiple? Because I know I do that. I'm working on 3 different books at the same time right now. But if you would, can you elaborate further on that?
Yes. We are working on Cernunnos's box. It's almost completed. It's not going to be a very long book. It has a lot of visuals in it, lots of photos and codes. It has a lot of different subjects that flow together with CERN. Jesus preaching at Caesarea Philippi, which is where the gate of Pan is, and Pan is the son of Hermes. Hermes Hermon means forbidden place, and it is Mount Hermon where the Watcher class of fallen angels descended. And this is in the book of Enoch. And so I have the verses, and we talk about in our book and calculate and show in other books that were not in the Bible, but they are books that have that they do combine with information of the Bible, and it makes a lot more sense if you read those books also. But I have calculations in the book when the year that the angels fell, with a lot of proof, and in what generation, the names of the people that were named after the fallen angels of that year. And so I have the book basically is talking about the fallen angels, the gates of hell, which Jesus preached against, talking about CERN opening up a gates of hell. It talks about the 4 faces of Samael, which is the lion, the ox, the eagle, and the man. It breaks down the names of the leader fallen angels with those 4 faces. And then it continues on to break down with some of the gods that are worshiped in different cultures. So we have that. And then we talk about the sons of Jupiter and who they were and some of their temples and how they believe that they are the children of Jupiter Jupiter and Venus. And Jupiter is actually the resurrected Saturn, but that's going to be in my book talking about the Ogdode. So we have a lot of decoding in this book with the number 666, and we have Egypt, talking about the city of Pan that was in Egypt in the translations, and also Cernunnos, which is the the Proto Shiva, which is the star of Orion, actually all of Orion, which Orion's head was cut off. And Shiva's son, Ganesh, actually translates to 4096. This is not in my book, so I'm skipping around here. But so basically, our book that's basically what it entails. Is it basically has a lot of scripture. It talks about Pontius Pilate working for Tiberius. He was a Roman emperor. So Pontius Pilate was not a powerful emperor. He was a king.
All right, we'll be right back for final segment, everyone. All right, welcome back, everybody, for final segment. Let me go back to you, Kris. Let you get finish up with what you were saying, and also, if you would, what's the Ogdod?
Okay, the Ogdod it is basically the cosmic egg in Egypt, and it represents 4 frogs and 4 snakes, and they came from the abyss. They represent the planets on the Kabbalah tree, and they ride their boat of Ra. They merged with the Ennead in Egypt in Heliopolis, which is the temple of the sun, which means Saturn. It translates to Saturn. Saturn was Helios, and he was the sun in the Golden Age. So Hermopolis, and Hermes is the moon god, and he is the leader of the Ogdod. And well, actually, Jupiter is Amon, which he is his spirit in a certain aspect, but Thoth is the one who is the Bennu bird, which lays the egg and bursts the Ogdod. And basically, this is what CERN says that they want to do. They want to birth the cosmic egg again. They want to recreate the Big Bang. Now, the Ogdod happened in 2600 BC, and it's a lot to go into, but I've studied it for years, and this is pretty much the core of understanding ancient history in Egypt and understanding how the pagan religions believe today and how they worship the Antichrist. The Ogdod, if you think of it this way, they're basically, if you think about Saturn fell, and then there was the flood, and then the Ogdod came, they all of the planets are equal to Saturn. They represent Saturn. So Saturn was the lion, the eagle, the ox, and the man, and he split his deity. Jupiter is the eagle, Mars is the man, Mercury is the ox, and Venus is the lion. And they all surround Apollo on the Kabbalah tree and make a pyramid. And that is who they want to birth as the sun, is Apollo. Now, throughout history and cycles and the fight of the throne through Set and Horus, there was, the sun god Ra had many aspects. There was Re, which represented Uranus, and also Thoth in another aspect. But and that's based upon my research. But actually, different cycles of the planets would say, okay, well, Jupiter is the sun, so they would call Jupiter the sun, or Mars the sun, or Kathy is her name, right? Yeah, she was asking about the Gotthard Tunnel. Well, the 2 mountains on the side, and then you come out into the light, is showing the sun being born between 2 mountains. And that has everything to do with the hieroglyphs in Egypt, with the scarab beetle representing the sun as the crab. The nebula, the crab, the M44 beehive is in the crab, and that's where the souls are said to be born. And so it's just a lot of in-depth research, but the Ogdod is pretty much the core key. It represents the cosmic egg. The Ganesh is the cosmic egg in India. The Ogdod is the cosmic egg in Egypt. And the cosmic egg exactly translates to 4096. 4096 is the Chaturthi Ganesh, which in they worship the cosmic egg, the past, present, and future. And 4096 is the key. And then the next step up from that, when Anthony explains it on our shows with the octaves, the 8192 is the next computer, and that represents the gate. And it also is the signature of Azazel on the Kabbalah tree, and it translates to IXXI.
That's all heavy duty stuff.
Can I ask, do you think there's a connection with Lady Gaga and the egg that she was traveling in to birth a new race?
Yeah, actually, Pluto represents Osiris and the dead, and Osiris resurrected as Jupiter as Saturn, and that's very complex. But Gaga is a translation for the DNA, and also Gaga was Pluto. Pluto used to be named Gaga, and the moon of Saturn, which is his son, and then he became Pluto. When Pluto became in our atmosphere, that is when we got Wi-Fi connection during the 1930s. That's when Hitler got a hold of it and he did the IBM computer. Well, CERN is the same thing, but it's a huge computer system compared to what was back then. But yes, Lady Gaga is representation of Pluto. Pluto was the head of Orion at one point. The head was cut off, and that's why we call it Cernunnos's box because the head was cut off. If you see the horns on Cernunnos, those horns represent the trident, and that was the head of Orion at one point.
Wow. Can you talk about some of the chapters? Do you have already that lined out just to give, people kind of an idea of some of the chapter
Yes.
headings?
Uh-huh. One of the chapters is called Where It All Began, because Pan means all, and it is encoded with CERN in 666, and I have a little picture of his flute with all the planets on each note, because all planets are notes. All planets are based on C, which Saturn represents Do as C, and then all the other planets are like C1, C2, C3, and they're all harmonic. And that's another puzzle that I'm working on with Anthony. But Pan is the son of Hermes. Hermes translates to Thoth, and um, he was the one who fell on Mount Hermon, and he's the father of Pan in that language and that aspect. So we have that, and we have the gate of the fallen angels. Another chapter is the leaders of the fallen angels. We also we have another chapter about the birth of the giants. And in that chapter, we talk about how demons roam the earth from the giants and how that is explained in different books. And we tie all of this in with CERN. We also give the Bible Strong's translation. Hermes is the Strong's Concordance 2060. So I do put in all the Bible verses and the codes and the Strong's translations in from the Bible in our book also.
Yeah, I like to do that too. I think it's a great way to, take people back to the original language and to give them an understanding for the original context of the passages, the verses, the words that are, being brought forth in understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then another chapter is the false alpha and omega. There's a code of the goat pan in there that translates to alpha and omega. And then I get into the Egyptian aspect of the book and the translations of the gods that translate to the number 666, just like Nero in Rome. So we have a lot of different chapters in there, but I'm still editing the book, and Tim's actually helping with a large part of that. So, but that is basically the bulk of it and the bulk of the research, and it ties in with Jesus preaching at the gates of hell. Explains, who the fallen angels are and how it applies today, and how CERN wants to open up these gates, and these leaders think that they're the sons of Jupiter. It's the same thing. It's history repeating itself,
Hmm.
basically.
Yeah, I when I write similar about, like, of course, different topics and different research, but in a similar way, in tying those kind of themes together: the fallen angels, the giants, the enmity between the seed lines, the connections with the war in heaven, the idolatry, the worship of the pagan gods, the dragons, all these pagan deities. Their connections to the antediluvian feathered serpent, and the worship all the pantheon of gods and goddesses, how that ties into current Luciferianism, Satanism, and the New World Order religion, the Freemasonic, the reverence, the rituals, the blood sacrifice, all of that.
Yeah, no, your research and your books are way more in depth than ours. We just kind of go with it with a different angle, and kind of tying CERN in it, and then and decoding a lot. So there's a lot of decoding the number 666 with different gods and different things, and showing this little trail. And the other book that I'm working on is called The Unicorn Antichrist, and that one is a decoded book also, because unicorn means basically it Dagon means corn, and Uni is also another god, which is Asherah, and she is part of his deity. So, and UN is the beginning of U is unicorn in the N, and then I go to explain the translations of Venus and Jupiter and how those codes make UN, and it is tied to the Baphomet. So the unicorn antichrist is also has to do with the stars and the triangle that's behind Orion and birthing the beast. So that is another book that I'm working on, and the other one, like I said, has to do with the Ogdoad, so I can explain the Ogdoad and the Aeneid and the resurrected Saturn and the underworld, and then the other one is Joseph, the father of the Pharaoh. I've been able to translate many of the names in the Bible. I know who the Queen of Sheba is and her correct names in Egypt, and then the other names that she's called. She actually lived in the city of Pan in Egypt, which is a different name that we know it by, and she was the mother of Solomon's son.
Right,
And
Menelik. Was
yeah,
is that name Belchris by chance?
I'll send it to you. I actually did a presentation. We did a little show on it a while back, but it's
Yeah.
her name. One of her names is Carol Mama, and the other name I cannot pronounce. It is a long name that I can't
Mhm.
pronounce, but I'll send it to you. I can show you the proof that it's her with her artifacts at the same time near Ethiopia.
Okay, well, the reason I asked is I've been recently reading a book called "And It Came to Pass," which is a story of David, a bunch of old different tales and lost, forgotten, forbidden books in connection to David and Solomon, and it speaks about her, and names her as Belchris in this particular in one of the stories about the Queen of Sheba in that particular book, and her meeting Solomon and everything. It's a fascinating story. But
Wow,
anyways,
love to
yeah,
see that.
yeah,
She could actually go by that name because all the Egyptians go by many
many names
names.
exactly. Yes.
Yeah, it could be
Right.
one of her names, but I can send you what I have on that. I don't mind at all. And then I've translated Jesse's name, the father of David.
Uh-huh.
Um, and many names in the Bible that I've done research on it. I love to decode the names and figure out, well, who were they? I mean, why can't I see artifacts of them? If we can have ancient artifacts from many years ago, way before David, why can't I see them now? It's because
Uh-huh.
they're hidden. They're
Right.
hidden from us.
And I
So
agree
I
with
love
you. The
to do.
names are so important because they reveal so much.
Yeah, I have a very good source to also to decode those things, and I can send it to you.
Okay, well, yeah, that I'd be interested in checking all that out and looking at it. Um, let's get Tim and Kathy a chance to comment because we're nearing the end of the show. Tim.
Oh, I was just going to follow up on the Lady Gaga thing. That this whole cosmic egg is interesting for people who don't study it. That the pop culture references to it, the birthing of a new race that Kathy was bringing up, is connected. I think connected to the next year's event with the 88th parallel, and the birthing of a new race, because I do think the counterfeiter, Lucifer, wants to create his own race, and
Absolutely.
and eliminate uh, the image bearers, which are us.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
I do see next year with that cosmic egg going over the 88th. And I look at the 88th degree parallel also as the two columns in Freemasonry, the birthing of his new creation. And I do think that the geoengineering and the just terraforming this earth, as I mentioned with Zen last time, I do believe that he's just trying to recreate what God created, but this time make it his creation,
Yes,
but
counterfeit.
counterfeit. And
Yep.
that's basically where my final comments.
Okay, I'm going to answer this question really quick from Rayo in the chat room. What is the original language? If you read the Book of Jubilees, it tells you that Paleo Hebrew is the original language of paradise. And not only did Adam and Eve speak that and also converse with the angels and God in that, but that the animals before the fall, that they also spoke in Hebrew, and it also says somewhere in scripture that we will be restored to this language at the end of days. Let me give Kathy a chance to comment, and then we'll go to Kris for final comment and to share your information once more. Kathy?
That was really interesting. You said that's in the Book of Jubilees?
Yes, the Book of Jubilees speaks about before the fall how they spoke Hebrew and it was the original language. And it also says, I believe in chapter 15, that Abraham, that he is given insight by the angels, and the Most High tells one of the angels to teach him the original language. And so he is then able to, he's restored this language, and being able to read the old scriptures and the old, the old language, and in that way to bring forth the knowledge of the Most High once more, because we know that Abraham was chosen to be the father of the Hebrews and to bring forth the teachings uh, that were brought to Adam, given to Adam, passed on to Enoch, then passed on to Noah, and then passed on to Shem, who was, according to some of the stories, Melchizedek, and that Abraham was led away and brought into what is called the order of the ancients, and that is also the Melchizedek priesthood. Anyways, that whole story you can find in many books, but specifically in one called the Writings of Abraham. But Kris, let me give you a chance to. We got like 5 minutes. If you would give out your website contact information once more, where people can go to find and support your work, and then a final comment from you as well.
Okay. Endtimesmatrixnews.com is our current website. And if you want information on everything that we're doing or updates or anything, you can go to End Times Matrix News Facebook. My Facebook is Kris ETMN. And my final comments were, I have decoded a lot of the alphabets, and I know that there is a split in understanding the Hebrew, and the Phoenician alphabet is actually, um, the way that I understand it from my research, the Phoenicians were living on the 33rd degree. They were the remnants of the giants. The Phoenician alphabet are the stars. The Taurus is A, um, Gimel is B. So you have three letters that are the Gemini twins. And so I have decoded the Hebrew alphabet with that star alphabet. Now, I'm not saying they believe the same way, so don't get me wrong.
Mhm.
I'm just saying that I decoded that. I also decoded some of the runic alphabets and with the stars and why they believe that they have this certain DNA from the DNA crossing. And so that's something that I'm working on also, but I have been able to decode the alphabet with the constellations, which
Can I
helps me to understand.
And I wanted to say
Yeah.
really quickly, be sure and go to their YouTube page because the videos that they have done with Kris decoding and the graphics that she brings into that, just fascinating. There's so much to learn from that. It's very heavy with a lot of great information and graphics. So be sure and look into that.
And I wanted
Oh,
to
thank
ask you this as well, Kris. Have you looked into the Mazzaroth and the message of the stars and how it tells the story of Christ being born of a virgin and how he would crush the head of the serpent, that he would be Savior Messiah? Because if those that haven't, that the story of Christ is encoded into the stars and the zodiac and the constellations. Do you bring that forth in your work at all?
Actually, I don't. I am trying to understand that aspect of it because I do believe that
Yeah,
because
it's
Satan
fascinating.
copies everything about he copies everything about Jesus, but I do think that now I have a study that I have decoded the sons of Jacob with the constellations, and so that's a study that I have done. I know that Jacob gave the blessing to how Esau sold his birthright.
Yes.
Well, Jacob gave the birthright to Joseph's two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. I've also decoded their names in Egypt. I know who they are, and which is very fascinating stuff. But yeah, so I do believe that. I haven't gone to that extent to decode it with actually, Jesus. I'm very careful about that,
Mhm.
but um, but no, I have not done that.
Well, that's a fascinating study as well. So I do, recommend people check that out as well. Mazzaroth, the story of Christ and the stars. Tim, do you want to give out your contact information one more time?
Okay, it's End Times Matrix News on Facebook. I cover a lot of the breaking political stuff mixed with the more of the podcast things and also the research that I do together with Kris and Anthony on CERN related topics. And Kris, let's see, KRIS ETMN on Facebook and the YouTube channel and the endtimesmatrixnews.com website, which we will be working on. And it's a pleasure being on your show, and I'm really looking forward to getting this book out because the book really did come out of nowhere. It was one of those things where we were just looking at CERN and the God surrounding CERN, and that just developed into this amazing piece of research. It is like, wow, God just plopped it right in our laps, so it was really interesting.
Yeah, it's amazing the way that happens. So much of my research ends up being the same thing. But hey, thanks both of y'all for
Thank
joining
y'all.
us. Thank you, Kathy. God bless all.
Good night.
Shalom. Be blessed. Good night.